Open the PowerPoint.
Oh my God, this is like such a process.
Open the PowerPoint.
Okay, now we are live.
Hello.
Oh, hey everyone.
This is perfect for our topic for today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you need to come. Let me see. Oh, I have to make this smaller.
You can also make us smaller. Okay.
Well, definitely my heart is racing so fast right now.
Yeah, that was definitely, it's quite an effort just to get in this whole thing, get this live stream started.
I think we can all relate though. Whoa, what did you push?
I'm trying to organize the video. There you go. Okay.
All right, hey.
Hello, everyone.
Wow. Hi, Maida.
Welcome to Teachers Who Tech. We're going to talk about tech, life issues, challenges.
We are teachers.
Everything. All
We are
amazing
teachers.
stuff. Yeah.
We're going to talk tech today.
So, welcome, everyone. My name is Christina.
I'm Serena.
Serena and Kate. I'm confused with this. I don't know who is.
Reverse.
We are part of Teachers Who Tech, and we're very excited about all of you joining us for our second webinar in English. We are now in Seattle in the Columbia Library, and let's see, we're going to start with this. So Teachers Who Tech is a company that is based in Seattle, and we promote an interdisciplinary curriculum. We use project-based learning and design thinking as our main frameworks, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the process of this webinar.
Like Christina said, I'm Serena Merle, and I'm the co-founder and business manager here for Teachers Who Tech. Deal with a lot of our business contracts for United States and also Latin America and in China.
And I'm Kit Footerich. I'm the director of curriculum development here at Teacher Who Tech. And yeah, just very excited to be a part of this whole project.
And you?
I'm Cristina Paredes, and I'm the founder of Teachers Who Tech. I've been involved in education for the last 10 years, and this is a project that it started because of a personal necessity, and now it's just expanding to so many different places, and we have a lot of opportunities everywhere here in Seattle. And as Serena said, we are also having projects in Ecuador as well as in China. Okay, so what is this? We have a couple of webinars that in the past we talk about inclusive education, and we also have webinars in Spanish for all our Latin American Spanish-speaking community. You can access all of our webinars going to Teachers Who Tech on Facebook as well as YouTube, and you can also tweet us, and you will find all of the information about Teachers Who Tech. Okay, you guys are ready?
I'm so ready. Let's get talking. Yeah, I'm ready to get in this discussion.
Teachers Talk Tech. Okay.
It's a tongue twister.
Tongue twister, for sure.
So Chris, first of all, I got to acknowledge how awesome those GIFs are. Like, we really had a good time selecting the GIFs for this presentation. Hopefully you all find some meaning in it too, but I think some of the upcoming ones are pretty funny. So, yeah.
Good tune.
Yeah.
The objectives for today are, of course, we're going to talk about technology. We're going to share our personal experiences and challenges and see if with all of that you get some positive feedback that you can use either in your classroom or also in your schools. Okay, let's just look. This is in our last professional development.
Yeah. Still great. Yeah.
We were doing this professional development at the Bellevue King County Library System, and it's professional development about innovation and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
it was a nice agreement that we recently started with the whole King County Library Systems of training the librarians and administrators. This was the second part of our series. We also have an upcoming one in Federal Way, and it's also just about encouraging the librarians to feel part of this new move for innovation and creativity, especially with the use of maker spaces, and to promote that with their patrons, both children and adult patrons. So it was really fun. It was a great time.
Yeah, and I was at all of those projects, including the one at Federal Way. In fact, the first two of them, I was a participant. So the Mother's Day event in Bellevue, I thought that was really excellent. Some of the activities involved paper folding, and we related that to something a little bit more technological. And then the professional development for the librarians was also extremely interesting. A lot of engaging activities to reinforce this idea of innovation in the classroom. So a lot of exciting things in the future for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is creepy. Oh, wait, but I think before we get into Is Everything Technology, we were going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds in education as teachers and how we kind of got into Teachers Who Tech as an organization.
Can I say that I always dream about being a teacher?
No.
Okay, because it's not true. You go.
Inside, you were there. Inside, you were
I
ready
can
to
say
do it.
that. I've always been teaching. My first job was like in 7th grade. I was a mentor to elementary students for math and science. Always been involved in education in some realm or another. And so I can say that. But you didn't start out in education originally.
No, mine was pretty much an accident. After I graduated my bachelor's degree in computer science, I decided that I don't want to go into this world of computers and, just doing all of this coding in front of the computer.
I'm going to go backwards because that's freaking me out.
Yeah, not a lot of collaboration with other people. It was at that time like that. So I felt very depressed, and fortunately I ended up going into this training of this nonprofit organization called Share Foundation, and I learned how to use concrete materials and puzzles and different activities to introduce math, and it was so beautiful. I understood fractions for the first time. And then after that, a couple of years of training teachers, I realized that I'm a teacher. So that's how I ended up in my master's in education in California. And then from there, everything is just beautiful. 10 years of education.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah. So for me, we have a lot of teachers in my family. My own parents, my brother at one point, and a lot of people actually on my mom's side, who are teaching nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of fell into education, as formal studies a little bit later. As an undergraduate, I took some stuff related just to like teaching. I was studying psychology. But then when I thought about something to study at the graduate level, I thought, what is something that's been around me like by nature? And what is something that as a social issue I care about? And that was education. And I thought, all right, where do I want to be within that domain? And I thought, I want to be definitely at the forefront where there's like the most potential for growth.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to me studying learning media and technology as my master's concentration. And then from there, I actually ended up like coaching sports and tennis. And then I thought, this is where my whole philosophy comes into it too. I think like being a teacher doesn't only mean in a classroom.
Yeah.
We're all teachers too. And like coaches as well, you're out in the sports field and you're reinforcing a skill, a non-traditional one in the sense like, sometimes we think just teaching is like the math teacher, right?
Yeah,
but it's
that's
also,
true.
There's something to be said too about someone like teaching you to, I don't know, shoot a free throw, Is it valid? Is it the same? But for me it is. And so I started doing that and then made this change when an opportunity came up to move into the independent school world. And, I've been teaching for about 5 years formally in that kind of setting. And I took one of Christina's workshops last summer, project-based learning. I was really impressed, and we really hit it off on the level of like philosophical thing with education and learning in general, and here I am now.
Yeah, we're really excited to introduce Kit as part of our Teachers Who Tech team now and helping expand our United States and Seattle presence in the upcoming years. And
did you talk about you and how?
I just briefly said, I've just been a tutor. I always have loved teaching, but I also have a really big passion for medicine and language. And so I went originally into pre-med and linguistics, and I didn't really know how they were going to fit. But then I discovered speech-language pathology as a field, which is kind of like the science of language and brain and speech and communication. And it fit really well. I really fell in love with this field. And in that, I also was able to continue teaching through teaching languages. I taught English abroad in Ecuador at university and high school level. And then I taught Spanish and also English at high school level in California. And also continued to teach as a teaching assistant during my graduate studies. as well as doing a lot of professional development in my field and with Teachers Who Tech, thinking about adult education. But for the last 4 years, my focus has been a lot on early development, so birth to 5. And with that, the teaching aspect is really training parents, because who are our first teachers in life are our parents. And so a lot of my focus has been to motivate, encourage, train parents to support their kids before they move on to preschool or elementary school or other formal education settings. And so I like to think of the connection a lot of students, of how their parents and teachers relate, or maybe where they clash a little bit. But that's my focus and aim. I do a lot of special education in schools with IEPs or other differences in learning styles, as well as this early birth to 5 setting. And adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Let's see. So now let's go to the creepy
No, back to that thing. Oh.
Is everything technology?
So we were talking about this before we started our webinar today, that the topic is Teachers Talk Tech, and we're Teachers Who Tech as a company. And we were thinking about, what is technology anyway? So Kit got to looking up the definition.
Yeah, and the definition we found online is basically like anything that draws from some scientific thing and makes an object useful in your surroundings. But I think Chris has a better way of explaining it. And like, I know for Nina, this may not be something she really wants as like, to kick off this discussion, but Chris,
We really like the controversy of things. So here I go.
My goodness.
If you can picture yourself completely naked,
can you?
No technology. There's no technology on you. As soon as you put something on your body, that's technology. So I think a lot of people are going to make sense to this, because we confuse technology with electronics. And that is one of our big pushes with Teachers Who Tech, is also to make sure that our community understands that technology is pretty much everything. Is what Keith just said, right? Like, you built something because of a necessity. So I have my glasses now. It's because without them I can't see. And somebody was so knowledgeable and fantastic to think about this concept of creating these glasses that I can see better. And that is pretty much how we do things. So if you think about technology in terms of everything that you use, there it is. We all are very knowledgeable.
What I love about it is, what's so interesting to me is that we think technology and automatically jump to computers, robotics, 3D printing, technology. But then everyone understands high tech versus low tech. So if we understand that there's this concept of low tech that could be just a pencil and paper, or maybe just a hot glue gun and cardboard or something. Oh, it's very low tech. So there's still technology there. And I think that connection often is missing, that is still technology, that we can appreciate that as well, because the evolution of necessity of, pencil and paper then turns into our smart pads, with the pen technology with a touch screen, is the same concept. It's just, what purpose is it serving?
Yeah, and this idea of low tech versus high tech is exactly what was presented at the Bellevue Library, the professional development thing, and actually was the premise for the Mother's Day card folding thing. And we can describe it as like a level, I think, high tech, low tech. But I think what happens is, and this is also my opinion, is that whatever's at the forefront, we kind of generalize that and just that as technology. So time itself, as time moves, really kind of knocks certain things back in this category of like low tech. Because like Chris said, you imagine yourself naked. But when we talked about this, even if you were to, for example, be naked, but you've used like a product like shampoo or something, that is low tech, because there's a certain amount of science that went into the development of that product, which you inevitably wear when you like use it. So technology is all around us. And like, that's what we're trying to say.
Kid, now that you're talking about shampoo, I'm thinking that maybe people who are into this field of making shampoo are going to feel like insulted by us saying that it's low
Low
tech.
tech. Yeah.
Because that is
Probably use a
actually,
lot of systems and testing
they're
and
actually
computers.
right.
like it's
Yeah.
low tech for us using it. It's so simple. I just put it and it's done.
Yeah.
But for the people who are actually creating all of those different components, when your hair is very greasy or you have like, what is the white thing? Dandruff, right? Like
yeah.
all of those different elements, it's actually high tech.
Yeah.
So we need a better example.
And but this is interesting. We're talking about this idea that those shampoo people may be offended because there's this bias, that if I'm doing low tech, it's not valid.
That's very true.
It's not relevant, and really that's not really the case at all because those things that are technological have some kind of like function within our surroundings, so are valid as something to be learned and learned from. So for the shampoo people, like maybe they would feel that certain feeling of bias towards being low tech, but at the same time, like, doesn't matter,
Right.
All
And
technology,
I love that as a segue to think about technology and education, because are we valuing our devices in our classrooms more than the learning experience itself? Are classrooms that don't have access to internet or computers or iPads somehow disadvantaged than those who do have access to it? Is that really the make or break learning opportunity for our students? Or how are we thinking about technology and education?
Well, we've all been in classes and we know that the fact that they are computers or apps or 3D printers in our classes doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use those. So a lot of challenges are coming with all of this now new technology, high technology, without a valuable professional development. It becomes just an object.
So Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience with just technology in education, or what challenges that you faced, whether accessing certain devices or...
So I was working at this independent school and I was the director of technology there. And some of the things that I had to do is being in charge of all of the technology and the network. And many teachers felt very frustrated when their projectors were not working, because that's valuable time. You have 45, 50 minutes of class and you want to use all of that time. You have a lot of material to go through. And then now this technology is not working. What are you doing? What are you going to do? Are you going to stop your class because that is not working, or are you going to problem solve and doing something different? So I saw two sides, right? The side where it's very conflicting when you have all of your classes and it's organized and you have all of your ideas with everything is going to work perfectly. And the other side of, I am a teacher and no matter what happened, I have to go through this. So I have the two sides. Now, I really like to use low technology rather than high technology. I rather not to use computers unless I'm teaching a coding class. But even with that, that is my last resource. Just because what I think I want from my students is to understand that low technology, it's very valuable. And then in learning the basics, you're going to be even better when you get this cell phone. You're going to know how to use it in the best way.
And I think, from my understanding of this concept, which I've definitely bought into too, is it's about feeling confident about your ability. Because my view of it too, and as someone who's attempted to bring technology into the classroom, both for myself and for others, part of the challenge too is that with each of these developments, it takes time to learn the tool. You can't just like jump into it and, maybe for some people it's automatic, but for a lot it takes practice. And for a lot of teachers who have, I think, honed their craft, honed their method, and in a lot of cases it successfully works too. To feel that drive and that motivation to add something new and to take some risks is a different mindset, and it's a challenging one, because we talked about this earlier too, and my own experience with trying out new technology is there's some times where it's just not going to work. You're going to bomb it. Like, I wanted to have some kind of screen mirroring software, one class. So I had tried it out myself, and this allows the kids to mirror things up to a projector. And all of a sudden you make yourself a little vulnerable by trying something new where every kid, should be able to fire it up on a projector and maybe one or two computers don't work. So all of a sudden you're in a situation where it's not necessarily about the learning now, but it's about damage control and troubleshooting. And it relies so much, I think, on the strength of someone to recover and also to adapt. So that's a huge challenge, I think.
And it's not just on you. I mean, one thing is you're thinking about yourself, oh, these two computers are not working. And the other side, the students are thinking, it always happened to me. Right? You have these kids that it's true. Sometimes it happens things to the same student. And it's like in every single class, you have this, the software is going into updates or it wasn't connected. That was the only computer. So what do you do with that? It's not just the teacher, but it's also the student that it's.
Right. Or especially if you issue the same device or the same computer that they have to be assigned to that, and that one's the faulty machine, then that's going to be really problematic for that student. But I think even more so, like what you're talking about, Kit, is the mentality of traditional teacher mentality of I hold all the knowledge and I impart that knowledge onto my students. And then with such a high learning curve of this new app, this new program, this new software, this new iPad, and I'm not a master of this, then how could I possibly teach that if I don't know all the answers? And I think that a lot of teachers are scared of even bringing it out because they don't know all of the intricacies of how it functions or what to do if it doesn't work the way they want it to work. And that can put teachers in a very vulnerable position because then they have to show to the kids that they don't know. And I think
it's a mindset.
It's a mindset. I think it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to say we're learning this together. I think it's different than how traditional education has usually been set up in the classroom.
And I think what you're saying, is definitely true. Part of it is like our systems of education really haven't changed much, even since like the times of like ancient Egypt. The power dynamic still exists. So the teacher showing some kind of weakness, or even though we talk about the open-ended, educational environment where the teacher is a learner too, it relies a lot on the reframing of school and what schools mean also for the young kids, because they look at cartoons or whatever. They see the teacher standing up there dictating this, dictating that. It takes a cultural reframing, I think, for the technology classroom to really be successful because, everyone's growing. Time's moving, things are becoming low tech, new things are high tech. So the self-learning piece becomes huge.
And just the device thing. I think that school, like administrators want the technology for promoting the school. Right? Our school is top of the line. We have 3D printers. We're doing robotics. We're doing all this coding as a publicity piece, maybe, or they're not really understanding it, or even if it's appropriate for that age level or learning topic or curriculum integration. And so then they buy all this stuff and give it to the teachers, and the teachers don't know what to do with it. Or they give it to the teachers or have them sign it out, which is something I faced doing a test run of a new smartboard system where it was like a suction cup to the whiteboard and you calibrate it with a special marker, and I had to check it out.
Which now is old technology.
Which now is old, but when I did it, it was top of the line, and I agreed to test it out for this company, and I had to check it out. And just to check it out, I had to sign a waiver, a $5,000 waiver that I was responsible for that device. And so here I'm trying to teach my class, and I'm, not even the back of my mind, but pretty close to the front of my mind is in my head as if this breaks, am I responsible to pay for that?
I think Richard, it's agreeing with us, and it happens so much here in Ecuador, especially in the Oriente. And I think it happens so much in the world.
Everywhere. Even just starting this webinar right now.
It's true.
We were freaking out, actually. But like, what do? We have to problem solve this. We have to go live. So we just find a way of doing it. But it's a mindset again. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of we can do it, believe that you can do it, is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why our mission as part of Teachers Who Tech is to have these professional developments with teachers feel that they can do, they feel confident after coming to our workshops, because we start with low technology and we are framing it in a way that then you understand that little by little you can go and do something else. Well, you want to use a 3D printer? That's probably not the first step, right? Like maybe we start building a house with paper or cardboard, and then we see the complexity of that, and then moving into our software, but finally going to a 3D printing, which we talk about it. The 3D printer is so boring. When the 3D printers start going around, it takes hours, and kids lost any interest when that started happening. So the buzzword for schools and for teachers is there until, and if you don't know what to do with that, then it fades. So we have to be very conscious about what are the things that we bring into our classrooms, to our schools, because it becomes a challenge, and then it could be a huge failure.
And the key piece, Chris, that you bring up is the whole scalability aspect. You know, from for example, a low tech task. Well, I bring it back to paper folding again, and then what that can be built up towards. You know, you establish the foundation for some kind of confidence, success in a relatively basic instructional task, which incorporates low tech technology. Scale it up, and then you suddenly reinforce that feeling of success through measures, and that's really, I think, what is important, for teachers these days, especially the more traditional ones, is that I can do it. I've had some success, and I'm okay with,
I think that's what you were saying right before was risk taking, and we talked about that. But I think in any change that we're trying to implement, if there's too many changes, we're basically setting ourselves up for disappointment or repeated failure. And if we don't have, like, repeated failure is great when I can see the progress and I can see that this is helping me in some way to grow. But if it's repeated failure where I don't feel successful and I feel like I'm just digging myself into a hole, or I don't have any support or no training on this, then that's where we see where that just gets put in a corner. It's not used because it's too much. It's just too big of a change. It's way too much.
So I think it's important that every time that we bring something to the school, we really think about what's the main objective of this. Like, why are we doing this? Are we ready? Do we have are the teachers on board? You know, like, did you actually ask the teachers if they need the computers in their classrooms? And if you did, the professional development that goes behind that.
Right.
So have you been like that guy? Like,
have I? I mean, there have been so many instances where, as much as I felt successful at times, I felt completely the opposite at other times. But regardless, for me, within my, relatively young career, I'm able to reframe it as like a growth thing. And that's like what I really feel on a philosophical level, is being able to, frame even your experience with technology, if it is unsuccessful, as something to kind of like build from. And I agree. There's that piece, like, where you get beaten so many times by the piece of technology and you throw it into the corner. And, we talked about that with iPads, for example, and that may not be like an instance where it's so technical, but like, what do you feel about that, Chris? Because you had some experience with it. Sorry to put it on you, but like iPads or smart boards.
In 30 minutes.
We are in the library live, and they are telling us that we are going to be closing 15 minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
iPads will shut down.
We'll be good.
Yeah.
Finish at that time.
Please let staff know if you need any assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Just like that. We got to be flexible.
You have to kind of roll with it. Yeah.
I think, I like computers. That was part of my background, and I really appreciate all of these new things that are now coming into a classroom. But I think that I rather use low technology more than computers. I think for me, it's better that my students understand how to problem solve by using simple materials rather than using a computer. And when I use a computer and an iPad, I really have to be clear about the objective of this, because if not, it's not going to work. Guide.
Can you teach on how to tech our classes from scratch? I can't really see it. I don't want to move.
Let me move it a little bit.
Oh, I see. Richard, my team and I need a guide. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to get to strategies in just a second, Richard. But
there's a lot of elements.
Support, yeah.
And we know that many teachers need support, but
yeah.
Just think about what is the objective of this change and do a small change.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Nina, if you have all of these different elements that you're going to change in your class, you're going to feel overwhelmed. So it's better just to start with one thing.
Mm-hmm.
One thing. What is the purpose? We talk about this in our past webinars. Is the purpose of this change that your students collaborate more, or like they learn how to problem solve? Then thinking about that, what is something that I can change? Maybe the roles, that the structure of the classroom is not the appropriate for collaboration. So think about how can you change that so the students collaborate more. And also, more important than that, ask your students. I feel like sometimes we miss that element. Like in the education part, the school is not just the teachers, it's not just the students, it's everyone.
Kira just posted a comment that she said she loves how often the students might know something more about the tech than we do as the teachers. And I love that you love that, Kira, because not a lot of teachers love that. It's scary.
Yeah, like listening to like programming for sure. You know, like that's something that I've kind of jumped into in the past, and I feel very capable with my ability to seek out resources. You know, and that's something I try to emphasize. Students, like once again, going back to the general, perception of a teacher as like foremost expert, not to be questioned. In an age, I think where we have information all around us on the internet, the self-learning, being resourceful, finding out ways to teach yourself is as important as someone kind of like, directly telling you. But in those kinds of situations, I think it's common. I've had this situation where a student will be, on a pretty advanced level to the point where you can't always just understand what's going on, and you just have to kind of praise that.
Yeah, and it's what Kira says right now, like they're even more engaged when they can help you teach.
And you just making the students do it. I think it's also very humble to show to your students that you don't know everything. And I really do that on purpose. And I said it very often in my classrooms. I don't know everything, and many students can't believe that because I'm the teacher and I'm supposed to know everything. But I want them to know that I'm a human being. I know this much of what I'm teaching. And I think for us being able to think about we're learning constantly, and just let your students to show what they have. You'll be very surprised when you let them to talk about their experiences. Let's go to the next one. Challenges. Oof, we can be talking about challenges.
Yeah, we could have. Yeah.
So, look at that. Look at this.
Oh, here we go.
All right, low tech, high tech,
on his face.
and then you go backwards.
How many of you dropped your phone? I've dropped my phone on my face.
Bingo. Yeah.
I want to bring up something Chris mentioned. They're just laughing about this.
On my face. Yeah.
What I loved, something that you mentioned before we got started today, was that teachers are, as much as they can be intimidated about technology, they're not stuck. I mean, like you said, most people have their smartphones. And so we've upgraded, we are incorporating and moving along as it progresses. And so how can we just continue that mentality in the classroom? It's not like we're just, no, I'm stuck, I want to do it my way. We're not carrying around big old cell phones or only have our landlines at home. People don't have landlines anymore. People don't even call with the phone anymore because they're just texting. So it's not so much of like a pushback of I'm not going to do it because it's too much. I don't want to do it. We've been forced in many ways, and people are on Facebook and people are incorporating. And so I think that there's a lot of hope. I mean, we're very flexible and adaptive to change. And so if we promote that in our classrooms, I think we're going to get a lot more buy-in from teachers.
Yeah.
So it's good or bad, technology?
Oh my goodness. Like, I mean, Good and bad is really, I think, a loaded question because it's like if I think about
question.
I did and I really set it up as like, you know, heads or tail, one or the other, but I think it really depends on how it's used. It's like iPads, once again. Like I've been in a meeting in the past where I've seen a teacher like ready to break the iPad over his knee just because of how negative he felt as to like how it was influencing the kids' study habits, sleep patterns, so on and so forth. But you could go the other way and with a different mindset and with a different set of expectations with the tool, think about the iPad as like a tool for making artwork. Similar to like a paintbrush almost, you know, a tool in that sense. So like the good or bad,
so it's not about good or bad, it's how you use it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the other, like just thinking about populations that I've worked with, the pre-formal education, that birth to 5 age range, with parents, it's interesting because so often parents feel that giving their kids a tablet at 2 or 3 years old or giving them their phone to play with because they've downloaded educational games is beneficial for them, is helping them learn. And they're thinking that because it's promoted as an educational product, that this is going to develop those abilities better in their child, and they see it as a really big benefit. But then as soon as they get to school, our teachers seeing it differently. They think, okay, you can't bring your phones in here. Don't play games. They think of it as distractible or taking away from their education. So there's a disconnect sometimes between how parents think about it, how teachers think about it, and how the kids themselves think about it.
Absolutely.
If you can imagine yourself being able to use this phone since you're 2 years old and being very knowledgeable about it, and then going to school and somebody's telling you you can't use it anymore. I mean, how can we take advantage of this knowledge? Right. Like if you feel like you don't know too much about this, how can you frame it in a way that your students are now the ones explaining that to you or explaining that to the other kids that didn't have that opportunity? But it takes time. It's a new thing. It's a new way of teaching. And I think what we need now is teachers that are tuned into this new idea of just going with new things, like changing, being flexible, being very resourceful. I think it's very important now because the world is going super fast and education is just going very slow.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was reading Kira's comment here, and it's like exactly what we planted a seed in you, Kira, because we were going to get exactly to these points that what we were talking about of some of the benefits of technology and education we see is this idea of connectivity or globalization in the world and communication, specifically with different styles of communication or multimodal communication. Not everyone's forte is being able to speak to each other, even though when we have a project or we want kids to collaborate, we tell them to talk. But sometimes if they were to text or, you know, on a forum or chatting together or even taking pictures of something or taking a video or drawing something.
It's a way of communication.
They can express themselves differently that maybe their words aren't able to convey. And technology allows us to incorporate that in our lessons, in our assignments or projects almost instantly so that we can access different learning styles.
I can give an example from my own schooling, you know, like the use of technology when I got to college. And when I was in high school, we actually didn't use like all that much like computers or whatever within my school. I grew up in Switzerland, went to an international school. But when I got to college, what we were doing as a part of our schoolwork is participating in these discussion feeds where we would post comments in an asynchronous way. And when I first got to college, I was actually kind of shy. I didn't like to talk in class. You know, I didn't like to share my ideas, even though I had them. And then suddenly having the ability to kind of type it in, you know, and share my thoughts that way and have people comment on them was, you know, it was empowering because I felt like I could get my thoughts out there.
Right. Without the risk of,
you know, raise your hand
speaking
and like
out loud.
So
I don't like to raise my hand.
I do.
You know, like
This is a great team.
But as a teacher, I recognize that most students don't like to raise their hands. And I like to do a lot of anonymous type of check-ins, knowledge checks of even if it's just like a thumbs up, thumbs down, and they can hide it, but you can still kind of see and you feel.
Close
but
your eyes
if they got to like text in a code and I poll everywhere, or some of those instant polls, if they texted where they're at on a certain question, or is there any areas that they'd like some more review in, then I don't know who's texting that, and they know that. There's no way for me to know that. I think I got a lot more genuine responses than like raise your hand if you'd like to me to review it more. Nobody's going to raise your hand. And so sometimes just being able to access, like you're saying, a different level of comfort to share ideas. I think a lot of people have their ideas. It's just getting them out.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
yeah, well, I mean, with that, I think you're exactly right that, the mode of giving the students another way to participate is great. And as someone in like having very recently been in a classroom setting, I've used like the app Socrative to get like instantaneous feedback from the students. And the problem always is, one, preparing the material and having the motivation to do that, even if it's some like digital thing, no matter how easy it is, it's going to take time. And then the feeling that it can be launched successfully. And then, that uncertainty, as to like if it's going to work or not. Yeah. So,
Let's go to the next one. Where are we? The strategies. Okay. We have a lot of strategies to share. Do you want to share one?
Like strategies for like dealing let's talk about this guy, first in the GIF. Yeah, what's that about?
What do you think was his strategy?
Well, I mean, definitely,
Was it a strategy even?
He didn't survey his surroundings, for sure. Like I can say that right off the bat. He just kind of went for it, didn't think about the slipperiness, and fell right on his back.
What would you do differently if that was your case? I mean, we learn from mistakes. That it is. That's the first strategy. So there is no way in our classrooms to, if you want your students to actually learn, it's better that they fail and fail often. Because if you just give everything to them, what is the part where they have to learn something? No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
So my strategy in my classes actually is to provide the least amount of materials, so then they feel very frustrated with what they're doing. Why? That's a strategy for me to see if they are resourceful, which means that they're going to start thinking how can I do this differently, or where are those places, or who has this, or where can I borrow this thing. So that is my strategy when I'm thinking about them in a way of learning about problem solving.
I think, like I said, access to communication is a big one of a strategy for me. And also, I think just understanding that students are coming from different levels, starting points. So I can't assume that everyone's at the same base, but if I'm using, for example, some program or an app or something that allows for students to be at different levels, then it's not that I'm just teaching to a middle level and I'm missing out the ones that are more advanced or the ones that are maybe not quite there yet and just hitting that middle range, but everyone can be right where they're at, even if they need a little bit more time to be up to the level where I'm expecting them, or maybe they're beyond that and they can continue to push beyond that. I think it's
The library
it's an excellent library closes in 15 minutes.
All computers will shut down in 10 minutes. Please complete your work at this time.
Oh, okay.
We're completing our webinar very soon.
The robot.
Please return on library laptop and iPad if you're using a library meeting room or study room.
I don't want to talk over. I don't know how loud it is in the webinar.
Those who would like to check out library materials, please do so now. For help with other questions, please come to the service desk.
Well, now we know that we can't have webinars
At the end.
at the end of, the scheduling was a little bit odd then. Now we know. Okay.
And what you just said, Chris, relates into this setting of like you try it out, you learn from it, and it's not like it was a failure, like spoke over us, but now we know, and it speaks to a point of like productive failure, if you will. This idea of like creating an environment where like we learn from our mistakes, and this guy slipping up on the basketball hoop. I mean, certainly I think there was something to be learned from, running on water. It's going to be slippery.
And with those shoes.
And with those shoes, but you run super fast and maybe you can just kind of slow it down a few miles per hour. And finally,
he ran around the hose. So there's something going on there. I don't know.
What he was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. So we were asked to wrap up pretty soon. So I'm going to move on. We have a lot of strategies, and we loved to offer this webinar and also to just introduce Kit as part of Teachers Who Tech today, to be very unstructured and very informal, as personal and real. Of we've all been through this, and Kit being at 3 different schools and having to go through that first year over and over again, and knowing how challenging that is, not even to talk about the technological challenges with that as well. Or what age groups are we working at? What populations or areas, and like certain areas where internet access is very iffy, or access to computers can be a matter of like, is it too hot that all the computers actually won't run because the room is too hot? Yeah.
Or even storing the stuff. Like there's that whole piece that for our
sharing a room.
Yeah,
it's like it's all.
If you have questions, if you need tips, you can send us an email, or you can just send questions on Facebook. We're always really happy to help you in any way we can. We will continue doing our webinars. Maybe the next topic will be a little bit more serious, or maybe it will be even more crazy. Who knows? But
not here at the library.
Not here at the library.
In the library. No.
Yeah, we have a.
Learning more about, I think,
Sports.
special ed. Whoopsie.
Whoa! Look at that.
Sports. Yeah.
Okay. Best strategies in the field and what the students. Oh, there's a helpful document. Thank you, Kira, for sharing that for everyone.
Yes.
We'll definitely take a look at that.
We will put that link at the end of our transmission, and then transmission sounds like old style.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're
End
doing.
of transmission.
Live Facebook. But again, if you have any question, please don't hesitate. You can send us an email to teacherswhotech.com, info@teacherswhotech.com. You can
Info at Aroba.
Aroba. We're very, very excited about continue doing this. We really like to share our experiences. We don't know everything. We will never know everything, but what we know, we are just very happy and excited to share with all of you. So thank you for being part of this webinar. We hope to see all of you in our next webinar next month at the end, maybe. I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.
Oh my gosh, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.